coming up on the GRIMM Exchange.
The pain of loss. Today we look at horror films that deal with the subject of grief, with comments from Sweet River director Justin McMillan.
Sweet girl turned murderous villain. Well, today we have guest viewer Dylan Richards to give us his view on Scanners 3, The Takeover.
And we let the masks slip as we take a look at everybody's favorite horror movie masks. This and more on today's episode of
The GRIMM Exchange.
Hey horror fans, I'm Mariam.
And I'm Simi, and welcome to the GRIMM Exchange, your one-stop shop for all your horror entertainment news needs.
To stay up to date with all our content, don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell. Movies, games, television, what's happening in the world of horror? Time to check out our latest horror headlines.
Manga artist Junji Ito has done a manga adaptation of director Roger Eggers' film The Lighthouse. The film itself was released in 2019, but will be revived by Ito's macabre and usually erotic vision. Eggers' version sees two lighthouse keepers assigned to the mystery island of Lighthouse, where they encounter strange storms, omens, mermaids, and a nightmarish sense of reality. With Ito being inspired by the film, it'll be interesting to see the manga version. Candyman 4 is on the cards as Tony Todd reveals the long-awaited plans for the sequel. Todd says that he hopes to collaborate with director of The Intruder, Dion Taylor, who's a rising star in the horror film industry. Candyman 4 is set to be in New England during a snowstorm where Candyman is working at a girls' college campus as a professor. He's cut off his hand so he no longer has a hook in an effort to rid him of the curse. However, if he gets too close to people, the curse will reignite itself. Although Candyman is a supernatural entity, he'll still be visible somehow, and his family lineage will of course carry on throughout the narrative as always. With Jordan Peele and Nia DaCosta's Candyman still yet to be seen, it's great to see that the franchise is still alive and in the flesh. Netflix will release Korean horror The Eighth Night on July 2nd, and it's set to be pretty terrifying. The story centers around a battle spanning 8 days to prevent the awakening of something unimaginable. We can expect occultism, incantations, necromancy, demons, spirituality, and folklore in a visually chilling film. Castle Rock was a TV anthology series inspired by the work of Stephen King that was cancelled by Hulu. It's now, however, been revived by the Losers Club, who'll be turning it into a podcast. You can see the first episode now, and Act 2 and 3 will be available in the coming weeks on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Radio Public, Acast, Google Podcasts, and RSS. Netflix will be releasing an anthology series based on R.L. Stine's Fear Street book series. The first episode is called Fear Street Part 1 1994 and will be out on the 2nd of July. The story follows a serial killer possessed by a witch haunting in the fictional town of Shadyside that's been tormenting the area for centuries. R.L. Stine wrote around 150 books in the Fear Street series, so we can expect some decent scares and of course stories. There's nothing quite like the pain of having lost someone. Grief can often be a devastating and life-changing experience. Considering everyone deals with loss in their own way, it comes as no surprise that some filmmakers choose to create stories around this complex and emotional process. But how do we navigate around this sensitive subject matter, and can it actually be a cathartic experience to watch a film about it? Well, Justin McMillan, director of Australian supernatural thriller Sweet River, is here to discuss this heavy and very impactful subgenre of horror.
Grief and loss are something we will all face at some point. It can tear our lives apart, change who we are, and define us as people. Losing someone you love is scary enough. So what can the horror genre add to this? Well, it turns out that grief and horror can actually be a very therapeutic thing. Although films surrounding grief have naturally been around since film began, there has been a recent surge in films using grief as a central theme, specifically in horror. Ari Aster's Hereditary and Midsommar are two that have become modern classics. Ari said himself about his approach to Hereditary, quote, "I want to make a film that served as a serious meditation on grief and trauma. It begins as a family tragedy and then continues down that path, but gradually curdles into a full-born nightmare. In the same way that life can really feel like a nightmare, like everything is falling apart," end of quote. Both films look at what it is like to lose a family member and how we deal with this tragic loss. Characters in each film are haunted by their own grief, which appears unrelenting and harrowing, but both end in a cathartic way. The survivors purge the grief they were burdened with, and as the films come to a close, there is a sense of relief for those characters, despite the horrific things they go through to get to that point. In The Babadook, we watch as the mother Amelia struggles with the sudden death of her husband, left with a young and troubled son for company. Here, the mother's grief is manifested into an entity, something trying to tear the family apart. We also see the 5 stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. As the film progresses, we see each one of these stages take effect, and by the conclusion, we see she has learned to accept this grief by literally keeping it locked away in the basement. In turn, she has tamed this unsightly presence. The loss of a child is also a common theme explored in horror. In Sweet River, Hannah is searching for answers about her lost son. She arrives at a sleepy town dealing with their own loss and guilt. This town is visited by the ghosts of children who died there, and tragically, the families can still see their departed kids. Director Justin McMillan talks about his approach. Quote, "There's a reason that these themes continually appear in films, as they're a universal part of life. Dealing with grief or loss on whatever scale, whether it's breaking up with a partner or your cat going missing. We all feel these emotions over time, and there's no handbook on how to deal with them the right way. That's something we need to figure out for ourselves, and for the most part, talking to others or watching how characters process these emotions on screen can definitely be a therapeutic way to maybe learn more about how to understand and deal with the process." A lot of films show grief from a female perspective, usually a mother's grief, but Pet Sematary gives us a male viewpoint and depicts the lengths we go when grieving. In this movie, we see a family try to come to terms with the sudden death of their young child, but when the opportunity arises for him to be resurrected, our lead jumps at it, burying his son in the pet cemetery. Once the son returns, he has a ghostly appearance and has a sudden urge to kill. Seeing a child in his funeral clothes welding a knife is a nightmare in its own right and makes us ask, was it worth it? Another example of this is the British film Wakewood, where we follow a grieving couple who have lost their daughter in a vicious dog attack. They are given the chance to spend 3 more days with her, with devastating consequences, expressing again the importance of letting go. As tempting as the offer is, was it worth it? This is the question that haunts the leads of these films, who never learned to accept their grief and sought to find a way to bring something back that they lost. The films Goodnight Mommy and Dead Man's Shoes are similar themes with regards to ways people can carry guilt when grieving. In Goodnight Mommy, we follow young twins Lucas and Elias, who welcome their mother back after she has facial surgery. It seems they have imposter syndrome, and the brothers brutally terrorize the mother, as they are sure it is not really her. However, the absence of their father and general family support shows an interruption to the family bliss that must have started long ago. Dead Man's Shoes follows a similar character arc. Richard carries the guilt of abandoning his brother, who he still physically sees. In this film, he needs to seek revenge in order to satisfy his need to grieve and let go. Justin comments on the act of mercilessly seeking closure in times of grief. Quote, "It does ask the question, why do we need closure to get on with our lives? Why does everything need to be wrapped up in a neat little bow for us to put it on a shelf and move on?" End of quote. Grief in horror can often be what leads characters to change their lives and finally move on. It's often not pleasant viewing, so it may be surprising to some people that turning to fictional characters in horror can actually be a comfort. But these characters all need to find a way to deal with their loss, and so do we. We just have one last thing to ask. Never bury anything in the pet cemetery, okay?
And now it's time for the segment that makes your pet creepily hiss in the corner. That's right, the Grimm Zone.
Today's episode of the Grimm Zone is sponsored by It Artistry. It Artistry turns nails into works of art. Whether you're looking for designs of your favorite horror icons, or just want to put something on with a dark and subtle flair, It Artistry has a range of designs to choose from, or can custom make your dream accessories. When putting together a complete outfit, don't forget, it's the little things that count. If you too want those tiny works of art, contact them on Instagram under It Artistry.
Today we're letting the mask slip out of the films and onto our list.
That's right, Simi, we're looking at a collection of interesting horror movie masks.
Masks in horror movies have been around for a long time, from ancient folklore stories and festivals across many cultures to theatre and even cinema. You could also say that perhaps horror movies have capitalized significantly on mask terror, with feared characters such as Jason, Michael Myers, and Leatherface who've been tormenting audiences for decades. Masks in general carry with them a kind of mysterious and ominous axiom, and it could be said that apart from just the obfuscation of identity, there are also aspects of repressed memories or experiences which manifest themselves into masks. For example, people who create characters and different personalities that are driven by trauma. In other cases, it could be ritualistic, African shaman masks, North Death masks, and more that are usually a connection between the dead or living or just things that we cannot understand. Spooky. Then there's the crazy, masks to contain the flesh, heal the body, or to transform and mutilate. So let's take a little dive into masks in horror movies. 16th century horror Black Sunday, also known as the Mask of Satan, has the perfect blend of the macabre and supernatural. Asa, a vampiric witch, is sentenced to death for witchcraft by her brother, but due to a raging storm, the township finds themselves unable to burn her at the stake. So instead, they hammer a bronze mask with spikes on the inside into her flesh. It's quite a grueling scene, but the mask itself is also pretty terrifying. There have been many versions of The Phantom of the Opera rendered in film and of course the stage musical by Andrew Lloyd Webber. But the 1925 version of this film starring Lon Chaney as the Phantom is still pretty scary. Apparently Chaney also designed his own makeup for the reveal. It's actually a beautiful silent movie which you can find easily online. Generally, the style of the Phantom's mask across the film and the stage plays has served as an inspiration in other series and films too. Its simplicity proves that the mask itself can be more powerful than the reveal. Well, perhaps except from the Lon Chaney version. We all know that doctors in horror have a reputation. Most of the time, not a good one. And so Dr. Robert Ledgard from Pedro Almodovar's film The Skin I Live In certainly makes the cut. When Dr. Robert is banned from continuing his illegal transgenic research on humans, he keeps one of his patients named Vera. As the story progresses, however, we learn that Vera isn't just any patient. She's linked in more ways than one to Dr. Robert. You see, Vera is actually Vincent, a young boy that went missing after a brief liaison with Dr. Robert's daughter. In typical Almodovar style, twists and turns evolve through unpredictable narratives which are interweaved perfectly, resulting in a transgender horror. Throughout the film, we see character Vera all masked up in a neo-futuristic medical mask and post-surgery bodysuit. The fact that she's held hostage whilst all these procedures are being done makes the image of the mask even scarier, as her true identity is being erased, almost from the inside out. More mad doctors and a medical horror of a similar vein is Eyes Without a Face, also known as the Horror Chamber of Dr. Faustus. Dr. Genesier's daughter Christiane is being treated after a horrific accident which leaves her face disfigured. As the doctor feels responsible for his daughter leaving in the first place, he vows to restore her skin by doing a face transplant. With the help of his assistant Louise, they kidnap and murder countless women in the hope to heal Christiane. Unfortunately, Christiane's skin keeps rejecting the facial grafting, so in an effort to keep her skin protected, he provides her with a full-on face mask. Eventually, all hell breaks loose as Christiane discovers just where her new face has come from. And when she really sees what she looks like under the mask, she goes crazy. Japan has a long history of masks in their culture, including war, with many a general donning their mask to strike fear into the hearts of the rank and file. I mention this because it's the setting of Onibaba. In Onibaba, a mother and her daughter-in-law scratch out a meagre existence by slaughtering passing soldiers from the nearby battlegrounds and selling off their weapons and armour to the nearby gangster. When their neighbour appears without their son and husband, their relationship begins to fracture. The daughter, giving in to her desires, starts an affair with the neighbour, leaving her mother fearful that she'll be left alone. It's at this point that the mother encounters the handsome samurai clad in armour and wearing an oni mask known as a solman, an armoured full facial mask. This classic piece of horror cinema revolves around the concept of karmic consequence, with the bulging-eyed demon mask carrying with it a curse of righteous punishment for the sins committed, a theme that's repeated constantly throughout the narrative. Hope you enjoyed this week's Grimm Zone. See you later!
We also asked you on Instagram what your favorite horror movie masks were, and these were some of our favorite responses.
When we hear the word sequel, most of us instantly get a bad taste in our mouth. The sequel to a successful film can range from disappointingly flat to absolutely bonkers. But is it always a reason to avoid them altogether? Well, today we have Dylan Richards on the show to discuss Scanners 3, The Takeover, also known as Scanner Force in the UK. But was the film a pleasant surprise or an instant regret? Well, let's find out more.
My name is Dylan King Cannibal. I'm here to plead the case for the crazy film that is Scanners 3, The Takeover. Scanners 3 is a 1992 film directed by Christian de Guy, who also directed Scanners 2 and The Art of War with Wesley Snipes. It's not really connected to the first and second in the series. We're familiar with the David Cronenberg original, I'm sure, the science fiction, horror, espionage film. This is very much almost a parody of those films and definitely more of an action film. Now, I'm a big fan of lots of threes. I think there's a special kind of craziness that can often happen in the third series of a film. Let's say Halloween 3, Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Death Wish 3, Exorcist 3. It's almost like they just turn on the crazy. And this film definitely has that. I first become aware of it reading, I think it was Empire a long time ago. And they just laid out the initial scene. And that was enough to tell me what sort of film this is and to let me know that it's definitely something I wanted to check out. The basic plot of the film revolves around a brother and sister and a father. Let's call them Scan Man and Scan Girl. It starts off as a flashback on Christmas Eve at a party with the brother and sister there. One of their friends, who is dressed up in a Father Christmas outfit, is trying to get the brother to do his party piece. And the brother seems reluctant to do it and eventually caves and starts scanning the friend. Now, scanning is a lot different in this film than how it initially was showed to us in the first film, with Michael Ironside, with the amazing, I think they're called micro effects in the original credits, of the veins kind of popping up and the kind of slow build. None of this happens here. It's very much like a blue steel approach to scanning. It's instantaneous. The brother's being cajoled into doing his party piece, and he starts doing it to his friend dressed in full Santa gear. Christmas songs playing. They're at this party, and the brother starts doing it, and something happens and he loses control of the scan, and the friend is pushed out of the flat, falls to the pavement outside, and you're shown his mangled body whilst kids look on and Christmas hymns keep playing. It really is that kind of a film. We find out later on that the brother, in an attempt to control his immense scanning power, he goes and lives in a Buddhist temple to practice self-discipline. And so obviously that immediately in the film leads to a scanners versus ninjas fight, of course. Later on, you get to see a Robin being scanned. That was always something missing from the original Cronenberg vision, I thought. And also, there is a sleazy boss getting his comeuppance, being scanned to dance a mambo whilst doing a strip and revealing his red and white heart boxer shorts. It really is a 1992 film, and it shows. I've seen this film multiple times. I've showed this film to friends. Whilst I haven't enjoyed it, I don't think any of them have been able to disagree that it isn't hugely entertaining. And sometimes that's just what you want from a Scanners film. So enjoy Scanners 3, The Takeover. Maybe start your own global takeover. It's definitely something worth checking out. It's a great kind of crazy. Yeah, I really recommend this film.
As you all know, we here at Grimmfest TV absolutely love horror films, and we love the people creating them. We spend all year either interviewing them here for the Grimm Exchange or having Q&As with them at our numerous festivals with Grimmfest throughout the year. So in order to get a little sneak peek as to how those Q&As look, let's head to the Grimmfest basement. Come with me. Ah yes, the Grimmfest basement. What have we here? Sweet River. I see. Lucky for us, we did get the opportunity to have a chat with some of the cast and crew behind Sweet River. So whilst we upload the full interview on our channel, let's take a sneak peek at some of the clips now.
Hi, my name's Justin McMillan. I am the director of the film Sweet River.
G'day, I'm Ash McLeod, producer of Sweet River.
Hi, my name's Lisa Kay and I play Hannah in Sweet River.
Hello, I'm Marty Sachs and I play John Drake.
They're two really powerful positions for each mother to be in. And I don't know, I just thought that was really key ingredients for a really strong story because, being a father of three, it's for me, it's probably the one, children are the one thing in your life that you would do absolutely anything for if you were put to the test.
The location of Sweet River was almost a character in itself. It was leveraging the Ozploitation angle that has been a well-trodden road in Australian film.
She's confused. She's woken in the middle of the night a lot of the time. Do you know what I mean? So she doesn't really know what she saw was real or just a figment of her imagination or what, because everyone around her is telling her that it's nonsense and there's nothing to worry about.
So his main objective is to keep it together for everybody else. So my journey was, even though he was tortured, was a fairly clear journey in terms of my approach to it.
Well, it's definitely not easy subject matter, but they handled it well. Maybe we can see some clips of their work.
So you've got a visitor at your place?
Yeah, some English woman's renting the cottage.
Yeah, well, you know who she is.
How old is your little girl?
She passed.
I'm sorry, Why do you always have to talk like she's gone?
Because she is, I don't know. I don't know what you're expecting to find here, but this town isn't one for opening up old wounds.
I'm not a journalist.
And what are you?
A mother. My son's body was never found.
Well, if you want to see the full Q&A, make sure to check out our channel, GrimmFest TV. But until then, I also highly recommend the film Sweet River. Check it out when you get a chance. Well, sadly, that's all we have time for on today's episode of the Grimm Exchange.
Remember to support the horror industry by watching films, playing games, and reading books.
And speaking of films, don't forget to check out the rest of our channel, GrimmFest TV, for the marvelously morbid makings of some of our independent filmmaking friends and some Q&As with them.
And finally, special thanks to our sponsors, It Artistry. We'll see you next time on the Grimm Exchange.
Exchange.